Oh, they make you record it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just me though, so don't worry. Okay. There it goes. All right, so thank you guys all for coming to listen to me talk today. I will try not to take too much of your time, but I'm going to be talking about AI in academic libraries. So I'm just going to kind of start off with like, why should I care? You may think this is like a future, like emerging trend. And it is kind of an emerging technology, but obviously those emerging technologies can impact learning like really fast, so rapid. So it's kind of better for everybody to be aware of it and to be able to engage like proactively rather than like reacting to this like explosion in like the student population. And that's obviously going to help the library to maintain value, that you guys are seen as very knowledgeable about these like things that the students are interested in, you know, keeping the library as a central hub for scholarship. And that'll help, like, you know, making decisions on, like, what technology do we, you know, what do we want to do with all of this stuff. So after talking to Mr. Keith, you know, we definitely may not want to be on, like, the bleeding edge of some of this stuff, but it's important to not be seen as, like, kind of behind the times, like, you know, like out of touch or out of step or something like that. So that's kind of, like, why, you know, this might seem like something that's not really like relevant, but it is kind of important, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have already like become aware. A lot of students are, you know, very interested in this technology. So like, why can't I just like kind of ignore it, like put it off? It's kind of in the future. It seems like very like out there probably, but just like if the past is any indication, there's a lot of technologies that just kind of become the foundation for everything else. Example, like being the internet. So it became the foundation for all of these other services and systems that are based upon it. So AI kind of has that same like likelihood where it's going to start being the thing that's running all of the other things. And so it's been around for a while at this point. So it's not some kind of like, it's kind of been like a secret, like silent, like presence, right? It's been like slowly like infiltrating, like especially a lot of like commercial entities like Google and Facebook, Amazon, all these things that students are using like a lot. And so that just starts to become more and more of an expectation for them, that, and even more into like medicine, security, business, obviously, finance, like all of these other sectors are starting to like use these programs. So then it's more and more kind of like becoming like a skill that people are going to want to have. So anyways, hopefully that is like why are we talking about it? Why is it important? Hopefully I kind of covered a lot of that. Oh, I also had another example of something that becomes like really ubiquitous over time, that becomes like an expectation for especially the library, is the Google search bar. It was like, that was a commercial thing. Google was doing it. And so then it was like, well, when I go to the library, I want it to look the same as like my Google. So a lot of the discovery layers have that single search bar now. So what exactly is AI? It's kind of like this umbrella term, and it has like several different like subcategories, but just some like very general definitions. It can be software, hardware, robotics, algorithms that try to replicate, keyword try, you know, human intelligence or like higher order thinking skills. So basically AI is like usually a program that learns from a set of data, and then it like will have the ability to kind of like make decisions based off of that data. So for that human defined objective, it can have like predictions and whatnot, and I'll talk about it like later. That human defined objective is really kind of like one of the, you know, key components of it, is like you can ask AI to do something that it's not like given the objective to do, and it will try to do it sometimes, but it will not do it very successfully. And like we'll talk about that when I talk about ChatGPT. So it's not yet this like whole like futuristic sci-fi thing. Like you're not gonna have like Ultron like trying to run away, you know, with you. But it is like that general knowledge plus the problem-solving algorithm that generates like responses. So different types of it is like machine learning, expert systems, some natural language processing, pattern recognition, robotics. It's becoming really popular, especially the pattern recognition for like images, for like image collections, audio files, stuff like that. Natural language is something that's really popular for like the reference chat boxes because it can respond to like vernacular, for like automated responses like, hey, what do y'all have? And it's not like thinking like, oh my gosh, what is y'all? It's like, it can like learn from that. So here's an example of some generative AI, and I just wanted to include this to show you how important the like human factor is that, so this is the AI Bible, and these two on the left are from the same artist. You can tell they have a very similar like art style, right? So the artist is putting in the verse, the imagery, the style of art that he wants to create, and it's generating the image. It's not self-generating this image. He has some very specific like inputs that he's putting in to do it. But as you can tell from this one on the right, very different like art style. It's not just like, you know, doing things like willy-nilly on its own like free will, so to speak. Like it's generating it based off of that input. So I just wanted to show you like the importance of the human factor is that this art style versus that art style. They're both like created by AI, but you can get very different outcomes based on your input. So machine learning algorithms and software that can recognize patterns, you know, and try to predict future outcomes, respond. It's one of the most common forms of AI. And so this is kind of like where a lot of like programs are kind of under this umbrella term of machine learning. So for the library, it could kind of like help compete with the commercial market. So an example is TensorFlow. It's a machine learning program that can help with some like data management, like in the background, and it's an add-on to Google Sheets. Just a quick little thing about robotics. So I'm sure like a lot of you guys have seen like, oh, some new library has like a robot, like how cool are they? But you know, most of the time they are in public libraries, and as you can see, they are very like basic. So they do like basic stuff. Like this one just kind of goes around, and if you are like using a book in-house or you're ready to turn it in, you can put the book on the robot and it takes it back to where it needs to go, which seems kind of expensive for such a simple task. So they're still kind of like relatively rare. And when we're thinking about AI, I'm probably going to be like recommending like, let's let this one sit a little bit, because that's very like bleeding edge over there, in my opinion. So some considerations for the library. If you're wanting to like think about incorporating AI into the workflow, you basically want to look for something that is routine, repetitive, time consuming. Like think about like the natural like fit. So for example, like whenever computers started to become more commonplace, the natural fit was not for them to do circulation and try to like talk to the people. It was to host the catalog. So the Rolodexes were replaced by a computer. So you kind of want to like think about it like that way, like where can it naturally like help me? You want to try to use it to gain your time back, because as Ms. Jean had mentioned, it seems like more and more, it's like do more, but with less. So you kind of want to maybe think about AI as something that can help you manage that like increasing workflow and increasing responsibilities. So that way you can kind of like, you know, redeploy to the things that only you can do. Yeah. So any adoption of AI is going to require some human oversight. So you don't want to adopt something that takes more time, like for you to oversee the program. You want to be able, like obviously you do want to oversee it, have control over it. You don't want to run away AI program or anything like that, like messing up your stuff. But you also don't want to have it be so complex that it's taking more time than it's giving back. But just to reassure that it cannot function as like a standalone operator, it's going to be like a component, something that is in addition or like starts to fit into what is already happening. So one of the most popular ways that libraries are using AI right now is in the reference chat box. So anything like in the system is kind of like probably like that natural fit like I was talking about. So a data management system that could possibly like, you know, save you time, that it generates a report for you or it does something and like gives you like the nitty gritty. But virtual reference software, like a lot of libraries are starting to implement those automatic chat boxes. Because they can search through, you know, the library's website, it can search through other websites that you allow it to look through, and it can respond to the natural language like I was talking about. So one of the great things about the reference chat box is that it can open, or it can be open 24/7. So some of those basic inquiries where it's like some student, you know, is working on something at 2 in the morning, and you can program it to give them links to like our lib guides and stuff like that, to where it's like that might be like what you would send, like the direction you would send them anyways, so that way, you know, you're not obviously doing it for them, and it could potentially do that for you. And it's pretty attractive to the user because, like I said, more and more patrons are used to seeing these things like pop up in like business and whatnot, and of course, like if it gets a, you know, query where it's like, I've tried to answer it, I can't answer it, it can bump it up, you know, to you. Oh, some other possibilities is in the discovery layer. Some people like having some sort of like program that's going to be searching through other data sources to try to supplement like what's in the catalog. So you could link it to our institutional repository, so all of the answers that are relevant to that search query could appear in one place, or the archival finding aids or something like that. So if they're searching, you know, some keyword, you know, propaganda, they could get links from articles from the catalog and anything that's relevant from the archive, and you can kind of have that all in one place. Some AI programs, like depending on which one you get, will try to like learn, like I was talking about, like as they are continuing to search in that single session, it will continue to try to be like, okay, they searched for just propaganda, that wasn't good enough. Then they searched for propaganda and 1940s. Okay, let's like, and it'll continue to like try to learn from them. Another option, and this one, I don't know how useful it would be like for the cost effectiveness, but Amazon has those suggestions that are generated based off of an AI program, based off of what you're searching for, like cookies and stuff. But one example of a discovery layer option is Biblio AI. So, and then another option for the library. There's lots of different ways that you could think about AI. So hopefully it's not too overwhelming to think about all of the options. But as far as like digital citizenship goes, you could potentially think about maybe having a workstation that is for like working with AI programs. So hosting it in the library over computer science might be more preferable, just because the library is more central. Computer science programs can be kind of intimidating, especially if you're not in the program. But we want to just try to think about the idea of like there's more and more becoming like the class of people who can use the algorithms and can create them and know them and understand how they function versus the people who are used by them. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with social media and the whole idea where like if it's free, like you're not the consumer, you're the product. And so you want to kind of think about how that might increase like more and more like exponentially as algorithms get more complex and more of like a black box, so to speak. Yeah, so we just kind of want to think about maybe being a gap of like bridging that gap between those that generate data and those that are using it. So just some ethical considerations. Obviously this is a very like upcoming like fluid field that's coming along. It's going to be just as subjective as the humans that build them, and that kind of references not only like the company and the creator but the training data. So whatever like data it's trained on, that's going to like have a perspective, because you can buy AI that's already trained, like already is like ready to go, and then you can buy like some that you would train yourself. So that can kind of like, you know, maybe balance or unbalance, like depending on how diverse the training data is. whether it like, if there's something like, for example, in African American vernacular, if it wasn't trained for that, then it might not know that word, and that might not come across very well to a student who is using that word. So other examples of ethical issues was bias, violations of privacy. So obviously, just like with copyright laws, got to be aware of some of these things, like in the potential for upset there, and hopefully trust the company that you're working with. And also, as Ms. Jean mentioned, the misinformation, disinformation thing, that could also perpetuate some inequalities there. But again, the humans that oversee AI can largely kind of like work together and overcome a lot of these issues. So it's going to require like that human intervention, whether that be you or the company, your customer service, like whoever it is that you're working with. So one of the ethics for AI is human agency and oversight. So I just include that like kind of repetitively because it doesn't need to be this thing that's just like doing its own thing. Like we do need to have a little bit of control over that. So again, best practices: find the most natural fit. What area is routine? What area is neglected? Assess your costs. Robots are probably going to be expensive. Probably not going to offer that much back. It might be really cool. Like the students might think they're super neat and be like, "Yay, a robot!" But I don't know how much time that would save anyone. And just be open to learning it, just like any new system. Anytime, your phone updates and you have to figure out where everything is again, like don't be too intimidated by AI. The key is networking and connecting with other people that know it. Especially, I like to joke that like even my 88-year-old grandma has a smartphone now, so anybody can learn anything. And then just like staying up to date with like the trends in the legislation in order to like guide students and faculty and make good recommendations. So I'm going to talk about ChatGPT just for a second. I know you guys are really familiar with that, but this is an example why it's important to monitor the usage and trends. Because some publishers have policies where you cannot use it as a co-author, whereas like some of them like don't want you to use it at all, and then because some people are like, oh well, if I use it, let me just list it as a co-author. But if you use it and then you don't do that, then you kind of have some academic honesty like issues there. And then these are two programs. OpenAI is working on one, and then GPT-0 are programs that are looking to try to identify AI written text. So kind of like how Turnitin was something that came about to help with like plagiarism on the internet. These might be like really helpful, especially to like suggest to faculty to keep them kind of up to date. And when I was talking about the limits of AI, if you ask ChatGPT, how do you define yourself? How are you useful to higher education? It responds, I can be used to provide students and researchers with a wide range of information about artificial intelligence, its history, its applications, ethical considerations. I can generate sample code for machine learning projects. So all of its idea of itself has to do with AI and tech. So that could be a potentially be a reason why it's generating fake citations for people, because they're asking it to do something that it's not really like programmed to do. Like it's programmed to help you understand itself like a little bit. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So it says, overall, I'm a valuable resource for anyone looking to explore the world of AI in the classroom and research. So if you're asking about like history or English, that's not like what its training data is based off of. So you could probably maybe tell that to your students if they come up talking to you about it. You're like, well, that's not really what it was made for. So that's why it's giving you fake results. So a couple of potential systems. IBM Watson has some. Most of them have to do with like finance, but if that is something that could be helpful for like budget stuff. Teacher Advisor may be something that the faculty could use. Semantic Scholar is a reference software. Iris is like kind of like the discovery layer, like researching. Then the USL Studio is kind of like more of that data management, like on the internal side of things. Microsoft has a whole suite of options, and then all of the Python ones are pretty broad. I think you'd have to like really get into them and like see where they could fit, because I think those are ones that you can like train more yourself if you want to. So just in conclusion, I hope that you guys don't feel as intimidated by AI. Maybe it's a little bit more like, you know what, this could potentially be something that is going to help me, and it's definitely not going anywhere. So as you know, the volume of data continues to explode. Like we know, like some of the traditional like searching algorithms are going to eventually become outdated, just like everything in like research over the past like has. It's always going to continue to evolve. So it's just better to maybe like be on like the front end of it and not get like overwhelmed like after it's already happened. So yeah, we just have to decide how and when to incorporate it, where it's going to fit us, the digitalization and technological growth. Like we might have to adapt, especially as more and more people are wanting like non like in-person like programs. Every like college calls them something different, so like the distance education like programs are really like popular right now. So I have a couple of resources. I'll send out these slides to everybody in case you want to check them out. There's a TED video just of like like this. I know it says things are going to get weird, but it really just talks about what AI is and isn't. And then there's a really great article, a couple of LibGuides I found really helpful of like how other academic libraries are viewing them and interacting with them, and then a few more articles there. So if you guys have any questions, you can hit me with them now, or I also have these white cards out here with some Sharpies, so I may not know it off the top of my head, but if you write it down, I can get back to you about it later. So does anybody have any questions?
So I want to know a little bit more about the AI Bible. I haven't heard about that. So is it the whole Bible, or like did he just pick out different verses?
So far it seems like he's just picking out different verses and generating them. So obviously it's an artist, and right now a lot of his work is behind a paywall. So if you want to like see everything, like you have to like join, like you have to give him some money or whatever.
Yeah.
But he does post a lot. Like those were pulled from Instagram, so they're on a public domain site and everything. But they're really cool. He has like several, just like some of those more like kind of like symbolic like parts of the Bible, like Genesis. Like he has some of the descriptions of different types of angels, which I almost included those in there. Now I kind of wish I would have, but I was like, oh, I don't want to get too bogged down in that one.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, these are my references, and I will send this out to you guys. Thank y'all so much for listening to me.